Server restart in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Server Restart In. It's a weekly World of Warcraft podcast where three opinionated players like to get together, discuss their thoughts and opinions about the current state of the game. And I said Server Restart In this time, and not Server Restarts In. That was my bad last week. I was speaking too fast. My name's Jim. I'll be the guy making a bunch of errors and faux pas and all that
No,
good
that's
shit.
all of us.
Yeah. No, mostly me. I'm just blaming it on me. I'm joined by Kristen
Hi.
and Brian.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about some things this week. Yes. So I guess there is this current, I don't know if you want to call it like a meta, but where people are engaging in boosting, I guess, when you say boosting PvP to get gear for Mythic Pluses, do you mean that they're being carried?
Yes.
Okay. So, now that I know exactly what we're talking about, people are getting boosted in PvP content to get higher rating so that they can get higher gear, so they can use that gear in
Progression.
for
PvE.
PvE content.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that, I guess. So, take it away.
I guess. So I didn't realize that was a thing, and which is kind of funny because I am a min-maxer at heart, but PvP just does not appeal to me. It's I get too much adrenaline going in my body to do PvP. It's not my thing. But anyway, I happen to be watching a streamer that I like to watch today, and they were talking about it and talking about how they actually even did a YouTube video showing that they boosted. They got carried to 2.4 because you get a 233 weapon at 2.4k honor, whatever, arena rating, whatever it is. Anyway, it spurred a bunch of questions, in my mind about how I don't really care if they do it, but how much it kind of sucks that the state of the game is what it is, where it's, if you want to be a competitive person, it's kind of making you
Do things you don't want to necessarily do.
Yeah.
So
In order to do that.
this sounds like it piggybacks, or it's in a similar vein to stuff that we've talked about previously, about how like people are getting gear from other end game areas to use in like rating progression, right? They're like Mythic Plus seems to be, like, at least in our case, the more viable option for gearing than raid, because obviously you get to do all the Mythic Plus and all that stuff before the raids even came out. But now it seems that there's even something beyond that we don't necessarily engage in because PvP isn't, really on our radar kind of thing. So, yeah, but again, it's the same thing. It's like, you want to get the better gear or make it easier to do other content by doing different content than either A, you would normally do, or, I guess it's no different than just getting carried through PvE content.
It's the same thing.
But...
Well, the one thing I was curious about was that if it starts, so if there's different multiple weapon levels, right, for PvP, and that's just a little bit less rating, that's more attainable with maybe not such a boosted group, well then, is that on par with the level of difficulty that you have trying to get the later bosses down in Nathria for the same item level? Because there is some disparity there, if that's the case. That's what I didn't know about when we were discussing it kind of off, off the air earlier. Or was it just a matter of people were trying to get straight to 233 or whatever it was?
Oh yeah, that was what they were doing, was just getting straight to 233. And it's I have no problem. People can do that. I don't care. I have a friend of ours who keeps telling me that they would, help me climb the PvP ladder, but I'm like, no, thank you. It's just not fun for me.
You didn't make that offer to me.
I'm sure he would. But anyway, I found it interesting because I had never considered it before. And I found another thing interesting in that the person who I was watching said that they're not the only one who does it. Like, they're saying that a ton of Mythic Raiders do that and get carried to that to make themselves competitive. And it kind of, I'm not going to lie, it made me feel a little bit better about myself, because you kind of put, maybe it's just me, but you kind of put those better players on a pedestal a little bit because they're better at the game than you. These Mythic Raiders who are doing world first, like, God, they do like stuff and they get these numbers, and they're numbers that I'm not ever going to see. And it's like, dang, it's impressive. And so it kind of brought them back down a little bit, because you can look at them and say, oh, well, I suck at PvP too. And, they're not great at it either. Yeah. So it kind of, it made them more relatable, which was nice.
Yeah, I still think it's garbage. I think that end game gear for end game content should be kind of siloed into that arena, so to speak. Like, PvP gear shouldn't outweigh PvE gear in any like fashionable way.
So what would you do? Would you just make it so you can only use PvP gear in PvP and only use PvE
I wouldn't
gear
necessarily
in PvE?
make it only viable.
It's already been like that though, and that was a really crappy system.
What, with the resilience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even still, and it's probably more so closer to its implementation, it became a jumping off period because as seasons went up, the barrier to entry meant you had to go to PvP to get the gear so you could jump ahead, to the current content. Now that's kind of been patched over or bridged together more so because of like World Quest and shit like that. There's other ways of obtaining gear at that level, but at the same time, like, I don't know. It's one of those things. Like, I honestly don't think you should get a whole set of gear from PvP. Like,
Right.
I think if you want a PvP, you should get it from the world. I know there are probably competitive people that don't agree with that, but
So we know
you're talking about two totally different games at a certain point, like, and,
Right.
and
Yeah.
to avoid creating that thing where you divide those games between each other, you know what I mean? Like, because I don't think this should be the case. I think that if you go bust your ass in a raid with a bunch of people, right, and you get really geared out that way, or even in a Mythic Plus, I guess, I think you should go in a battleground and be able to whoop ass or something, right? Arena, in my opinion, and sorry, I'm digressing quite a bit, but I think the arena should be more of a normalized situation.
Like, more structured in its kind of self-contained.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not like it's a freaking Roman Empire fight to the death Colosseum bullshit, right? That's not what it is. So it's not like you're just going to go in with what you have. And I realize they want a progression system themselves, but once you get to those competitive levels, you're just incrementing barely. So why not just normalize and just have people go in with a base set of gear, right? So that you are equal. You are equal. with the exception of class differences and spec differences.
Right.
I don't know. I guess it gets complicated. I don't know what the recipe would be, but I don't.
Well,
I don't think that and I don't, maybe before, like, wasn't before PvP gear less than raid gear,
Yeah.
like item level wise?
Well, and they tried to do that. They tried to make gear, they tried to do that where there wasn't as much of a progression system, and the PvPers hated it. Like, they tried to make it all about skill instead, and the PvPers hated it. They're like, no, we want our gear. You know, we don't want to have to PvP or PvE for gear, and I don't blame them, because I don't want to have to PvP for my gear. You know, I would like to get comparable stuff in PvE that I could get in PvP. You know? And
Well, think about it in terms of, like, of other types of games. Like, did you guys ever play Quake or Quake 2? Any of those type
a
of...
long time ago.
You know what I mean? Like, think of those games where you just
Like Quake
jump
2
into
Arena.
matches.
Yeah. Well, it's just
Dead
like
team death matches and just play the game. Like,
that's just like I guess I wouldn't
there's-
say necessarily like Overwatch, but you know, it's like any game where you go in and you can pick up different weapons and stuff like that. I get what you're saying, and you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
It's just
come
like,
as you are, and here, and that's what you. I don't know. I think they should really, like, dig deep, because, and maybe the reality is they're not doing the PvP community a good enough service, right? And they're just trying to, you know, just keep
So,
icing on the cake as far as
I-
doing the same pattern
yeah.
over and over.
I think the real problem with the current gearing setup is that you can be really good in one area and you can get higher level gear from that area, whether it be rating, mythic. I guess really it's mythic plus and PvP, right? Because rating, it's kind of locked. You can't really gear up that fast there. You know what I mean?
or
So, like,
upgrade.
upgrade, like so you get like your high key gears where you're like up in the 220s, and then you get your PvP stuff where you can get like a 233 weapon and all that kind of stuff. But you can either get carried and get PvP gear and go in and dominate in PvE content, or do Mythic Plus stuff and get high gear there and go in and dominate in PvP because your gear's better, right? So it's giving you an edge over people who aren't necessarily able to either afford the carries or have the skill to do the higher content. And I guess this is kind of what they're trying to address. Like, they started with the Valor stuff so you can start upgrading, and it's looking like in 9.1 they're going to be making some changes. It looks like there's going to be some PvP gear changes in 9.1 where it's basically going to make PvP gear the best gear for PvP. You know, so I don't know if that's a PvP stat back on there.
Oh yeah, well, didn't they try to put loads of stamina on PvP gear at one time too?
Oh,
Yeah.
Wasn't that a
see
thing
that, but
where they-
anything that can be used in PvE like that, because
Well,
stamina could just be.
And they need to, honestly, because right now the current meta is people just getting one shot, and that's why they
druids and
added
Convoke.
resilience. Was people, and I know my classes gets the brunt of it for it, because Boomkins run in and Convoke and one shot people, you know. But they've changed that. Like, you can't. It doesn't do a full moon, I don't think, on PvP.
Yeah, it was
players.
full moon, something else. If
Yeah.
you were not.
Oh, if
Boomkin.
you weren't Boomkin, that's right. So I could still do it. I could
Wait,
still do it.
But that makes sense because that's your main
Sure.
spec.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't
So
know what they're gonna do for it.
I found the clarification for item level stuff what I was talking about earlier.
Mm.
You can get. Okay, so can you not get a weapon? Can you only get a weapon if you're 2400 or higher? Is that
You
what the
upgrade. You can upgrade. It's the upgrade thing. So you have a weapon and you go in and you upgrade, and you unlock based on how high you get, how
So-
much you can unlock. It's the
in
same
that
thing as the Mythic
case-
Plus.
you start out at 200 unranked? That's what this says on Icy Veins.
Okay.
So that right off the bat, that sucks. Because if that's way more attainable,
Right, but you
Right?
can get to 2.4K relatively quick, especially if
Well,
you're
it
being
doesn't,
carried.
matter though, because you still have 207, 213, 220, and 226. So anything relative, if you're trying to compare it to the, I'm more specifically the weapon drops, because weapon drops are just once you get to
Yeah.
Mythic plus, sometimes, right?
Mm.
Castle Nathria is like almost never,
Mm-hmm.
because they're all little tiny. Even though they're tokens, they're still on the end bosses. So
Yeah.
it's really rare to, at this point. I mean, I've been using the same 200 two-hand for the last 3 months, probably 2 months, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, if you at least rank up one time in PvP, rated PvP, I guess. This is arena specifically, right?
Yes. I mean, I don't know how. Yeah, I think it is.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about PvP because I
So
am
the
not a
first time- yeah,
PvPer.
as soon as you get to 1400, because I don't know what that entails, but
Yeah.
as soon as you get to 1400, you can get the 207 or
Yeah.
rank it up or whatever, right? So that's interesting because I didn't like. I mean, I've never really considered it because I really haven't done PvP
Right.
much at all. But if that's the case, then holy cow! Like,
Yeah.
Well,
you
so
know,
again, part of that though is that you get that 233 weapon, it's gonna be a good weapon, and you're gonna be able to use that in PvE content and reap the benefits from it. And it's probably a lot faster or easier to get when you're doing it, when you're getting a carry. So I get wanting to, like, in the next.
it's not even just the 233 though. My point was like, even the first rank that you get
Yeah.
rated,
Is better.
you're gonna get a better item level
Yeah.
weapon, and there's probably a good chance the shit stats are gonna be better than the shit stats you got from Mythic Plus or something.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how they give out the PvP gear, because I know, like, with Conquest, it's like usually like pieces of gear in a certain order, so you're potentially going to get it. It's a more direct path to get the weapon than doing.
That's what I always.
Yeah,
I always thought that it was relatively harder to get the weapon and something else. I thought, was it shoulders or something?
Oh, I think you can
It's
just
always-
buy them. You just buy them from the vendor.
Do
No.
you?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. There's fucking
There's
PvP vendors
PvP
now. They
vendors
brought
now.
those back.
So you just buy them from the vendor.
Right,
so
but
if
you have to have the rating level and the
Right.
conquest amounts.
Yes. And to get that rating level, and if you're just going for a 233 weapon, you're certainly going to have the amount of conquest on the way to 2.4.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and so it seems like, and you're not necessarily, honestly, it's mostly the people who are doing mythics, probably, who are, you know what I mean, who are rating mythic, who are doing it, right? Because they're usually the more driven competitive players who are doing that. So they're probably going to have pretty decent, and they probably do Mythic Pluses as well. And they're probably going to have a pretty decent base of regular gear anyway,
Yeah.
right? But that 233 weapon is definitely
So
a nice...
but so like with the gear changes coming in 9.1, they're also going to do something for raid gear. They're going to put bonuses on them, right? That are only active in the raid. Which,
like set bonuses are only...
yeah,
gonna be
I
active
think
in the
weren't
raid?
there some like in Najdatar that were
only in
Eternal
that
Palace?
zone.
or that zone or Eternal Palace only
Yeah.
or something like that, which I think is good because it means that like you're gonna get gear in the raid and not feel like it's wasted because you have like a slightly higher piece
Well-
from PvE gear.
It does kind of suck, though, because if you carry around multiple sets of gear, then you're carrying
Sure.
around your raid set of gear and then your overworld set of gear, which kind of sucks.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I don't know. It's
For you, maybe, but for me, who plays 3 of my 4 specs, it kind of sucks.
I don't know. It's you just need to get rid of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I guess.
You need to make some room in them bags.
I guess.
But I mean, but I get that's going to be good for making raid gear good for raiding. and not necessarily good for Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus gear, though, but it doesn't preclude Mythic Plus or PvP gear from being good in raids for other slots. And it seems like they're trying to get somewhere, but they're not. There's always going to be bleed over where you can get something doing other content that's going to make it better. I don't know.
Which is exactly why, like, the stuff we were talking about before is exactly why they should increase. They should just fucking increase loot drops
Yeah.
from the raids, even if they incrementally, after it, if every week it resets, if there's just an additional chance of loot dropping until the next
That
patch.
that would
Like, I'm
be
not saying the whole damn thing should drop at one time by
No.
the time the next patch comes out, but it should just go up to a certain extent every time, right? Or you should get something. There should be something there. Like, if you run it one week, you should get something for the next week that increases it or something like that. That just give out more damn gear, because
right. That would
people
be
are going down this route because it's the route of least resistance, right? Because there's
yeah.
a problem.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting if they had so you know how they had like the bad luck protection? Maybe they if they made something where the more times you kill the boss, the more chances of loot you got, right? So,
Yeah.
So you're getting I mean, some loot would probably obviously be wasted, obviously, but
What they should do is put back in bonus rolls.
yeah.
But
I don't know why they took those
no.
out.
Put back in bonus rolls, make them super expensive, not super expensive,
Yeah.
but expensive, but guaranteed loot.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's not a chance of anima,
Oh
not a
man,
chance
that
of
would
gold.
be rough.
Yeah.
But well,
If
no.
you don't get the one thing you want off that boss after you
But-
save it just for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, I mean,
I don't know, man. I'm not gonna lie.
or make
I
it.
got to the point where I hated the bonus thing, and that came out in, like, Mr. Pandaria, didn't it?
No.
I want to say
Yeah,
that
they
was
had
somewhere
the-
around that
They
time.
had the things in mists. Yeah.
Yeah, because you, like, re-rolled and
Yeah.
everybody was pissed because they got gold, and that just kept going over and over.
But okay, maybe not necessarily just like a token, but maybe a slot.
I know what
piece
you're
ro-
saying,
A
though.
slot
Yeah,
piece
I
roll.
mean-
Maybe like you could buy like a guaranteed shoulder drop, and it's obviously only usable on bosses that have.
Or even anima. Like, why can't we do something with anima to, or have professions come into play where they help increment your gear?
We've
or
talked about
something.
that too. Put something in to make progressions a viable professions a viable progression choice for gearing. And like you can get some good gear, or I don't know. It's
really interesting because these are like when they're probably planning this through, right? I don't know what they do to validate this stuff, because you can't, unless they're going to go through a humongous cycle for realistic testing. This is a huge outlier from the planning perspective. You probably can't predict that these little things are going to be a problem, and it's really hard for them to. If you put a Band-Aid on a bug, right? You're gonna create more problems down the road or something like that, right? If you don't actually address the issue. So I could probably see why it's a thing, and we're just gonna have to deal with it. But
it's
the
hard
reality
because
is-
just the way it's grown and changed over the course of the game's life. If they went back to like classic type loot structures.
Isn't that kind of what they did?
Well, I mean, yes and no.
You got like 2 pieces of loot in a 40-man raid.
Right, but I'm not talking about just raiding, because you could go farm stuff from dungeons, but you could only get a certain level. Like you had like your 0.5, your initial dungeon sets that were like your entry level gear for raiding and all that stuff. Was that what they were, or like 0.5, or like so you had those sets, but you couldn't run dungeons and get gear that was better than raid gear like you can now with Mythic Pluses.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, you could combat it by reducing the level of gear that Mythic Plus drops, like not have it be as high a level, have it be smaller increments, and change the way things scale in Mythic Pluses and change the timing of it. And, you know, so it does get more difficult, but not where you need those power boosts to overcome it, per se, you know. And I don't know. It's just, it's a messed up system, and it just, by adding new endgame stuff, Mythic Plus, I think, really changed the way it worked.
Mm.
You know, it's like once you opened up another avenue, it made it harder to balance, because balancing PvP gear and raid gear at equivalent levels, I think, would have been easier than having to balance 3 types of gearing paths.
Yeah.
Because now,
Well, not to mention that it almost seems like they didn't even try to balance it. Like, the path of getting dungeon and raid gear is not the same as going into Mythic and Mythic Plus. Mythic Plus specifically.
I
not
think they
Mythic.
just need to have raid +1, raid +2, or raid +2, raid +3, raid +4.
oh my god, could you imagine if you had like rating plus keystones?
No, they need.
I don't
that's
want
what
a
I'm saying.
timer,
Even
though.
Before, they should take out Mythic Plus and just go back to doing something that's more like
Or add hard mode. Add
A
hard
hard
mode,
mode or something like
bosses.
that,
So
yeah.
like if you had
Well, that's
normal
heroic and mythic,
No.
or like the hard modes.
no, like going into a dungeon and not having it completely normalized to one item level.
Oh, dungeons, not raids.
No, I was talking raids.
Oh.
But
Well,
like,
I mean, both. Why not both? I mean, the raids is a bigger dungeon, right?
I mean, yes, you can say that heroic is a hard mode version of normal, but hard mode would just be an additional step up, like a halfway point between the two, where it would
Yeah,
like,
like we were talking about before, not like stupid things like achievements challenge you to do that are kind of awkward.
yeah,
Just
no,
literal,
I mean, like, well, think back
you know,
to
instead of 2 bombs on Millhouse or whatever, the dude's wife or girlfriend, whatever, but instead of 2 bombs or 1 bomb that comes out of time, 2 come out, stuff like that. Like,
well, it's weird because like in normal or heroic, they send 2 squirrel bombs out, but on Mythic Plus there's only 1,
oh,
which I don't understand that at all.
that's weird.
But I mean,
Okay.
it's like if you think back to the Mimiron fight in Ulduar,
Don't
you go push
that red
the button, right, and the big red button, and it activates a hard mode, which I don't remember what the hard mode is. If it's just like
I think it was the fire.
area,
Adding
like
fire
yeah.
stuff.
So you add a hard mode mechanic like that it's in all of them, right? But like, let's say the difference between
Ulduar had some too, didn't it?
yeah, well, that's where Mimiron was from. You had that, yeah. The Hodor
Oh,
had
shit.
one. The Razor,
That's how you get the helicopter mount thing, right?
yeah, from Yogg-Saron, the last boss. Which the hard mode for that was not talking to any of the Titan Keepers to go down and help you fight them.
No.
You can increase the difficulty for that, or like in Obsidian Sanctum, you go do like 3 Dragon Sarth, where you kill the main boss.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
Without doing
See,
the
that was a good one.
Those were
That was a good
good.
one.
I agree.
So if you had stuff like that, and if you did it and you scaled the gear so that, like, let's say Shriekwing hard mode on normal gave you 207 pieces, because that would be halfway between heroic and
Right.
normal, or normal and heroic,
Right.
and then so even though, you know, so just like a little step up, not a full tier up, but a half tier up, because those pieces
Yeah.
do exist, because you can get them. Well, maybe they don't exist, not from those bosses, but if you would do that, and then like,
I mean, the way they calculate gear stats, anyways, it's all based on item level, so they can do it. There's no
yeah,
doubt about that.
so if they were to add those in, so like on Shriekwing, I don't know what it would be for hard mode, you know, unless you would to like put like the blood puddles in certain spots and draw like a pentagram on the ground or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, just
yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
right,
stuff like that.
right.
you know, and or and maybe, yeah, just something to kind of change it up, like spots where
Yeah.
you put it down, and it would then
Well,
create.
the Obsidian Sanctum is a perfect example, though, man,
Yeah.
because
That was
you
good.
could pug no dragons.
Yep.
At a certain point, you could pug no dragons, and that was great. You could get a group and go. You could even pug one dragon. Now, 3 dragons, yeah, you couldn't pug that.
Yep.
But there was also a difference in loot as well, or you got more loot or something like that. I don't remember exactly. I know
There
you
were-
got
there
the
were
dragon if
achievements.
you did.
Yeah, I
this
don't
one or
remember
all
what it
3 or
was.
something.
But man, if they would just do that, if they could just put that kind of concept stuff in back into these fights, and just that way, you could clear normal and then clear normal hard mode.
You control it. You control it completely
Right,
yourself. Instead
right.
of shit like Mythic Plus, which is now tied to stuff like the Keystone Master,
Yep.
where even when we complete a 13, right, even though we're 25 minutes over, we still don't even get a chance to complete the 5 or the 10, right, checkpoint,
Right. Because
which
we didn't
sucks.
time
Like,
it. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
stick a timer on the damn the whole table, right? And if I run a 20 and I complete it on a 13 level, give me the 13.
Yeah.
Like, why? I don't understand. Like, other than the fact that they're just trying to get people to the next patch,
Yeah.
which I'm not going to place blame on that, but it's so frustrating that they could easily do these things and it would not hurt the game at all.
Right.
It
Well,
would be more engaging.
It would be, but the problem is that there'd be people that would just to complain, would complain about it. And I mean, I'm sure some people might have legitimate concerns. There might be legitimate concerns around it that we're just not seeing. But for the most part, people don't like it when the systems change. And even when they introduce these changes, the Valor points, or the changes that are coming in 9.1 and all that stuff, I guarantee you there's a shit ton of people out there on the forums and all these fucking avenues bitching about it, saying they're breaking the game, they're ruining it. You know what I mean? It's just like,
Oh, sure.
it doesn't make everybody happy.
You can't please everybody all the time. You can't. Somebody is going to complain about something.
And-
But you can cut backwards, right? You can start with a big piece of wood, right? And start chipping away at it slowly. But if you start with a small piece of wood, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
You can't build up
all this,
like.
all
you
this,
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's more difficult to
all this talk
to-
of wood.
Oh my god.
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's the approach they're taking. I don't know.
Don't wiggle your eyebrows at me.
What? I didn't say shit.
um,
No, I
You
know.
know what I mean? Like,
I
it's
do
much
know what you
easier
mean.
just to make the mistake of giving people too much, and then dial it back down the road.
It's
rather
not.
than
No, it's not. It's not. When you give people too much and you start taking stuff away,
It feels
that's
bad.
almost worse.
no.
than-
But
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't cold turkey people like the freaking drug addicts. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I mean, what I'm saying though is that they've done this too many times in their history that they should already know a healthy recipe, or at least a good threshold where they can give too much gear and then see how it works out, right? That so that these things, when they highlight, they can work on those more effectively rather than these issues highlighting from the fact that is more of a problem, right? Or whatever it may be. The fact is, these are all outlying problems that become humongous issues for players between these awkward cycles, right? Where we're just kind of at a stalemate until something interesting comes back out, right? And if that's the one challenge that we have to go and do, yet we still have to face, this drastic difficulty hump, that's a problem, right? And they need to try and at least understand how they get to that point a little bit better, and I'm sure that you have plenty of data that shows them or suggests to them that these are things, right? But
These are things.
I know that this will probably be not a super popular opinion, but I kind of wish there was a way that they could base who gets gear based on performance.
No,
Yeah.
definitely would not be a
Yeah. Not popular.
because that's almost like a game controlled loot master.
Well, I mean,
Isn't it the same thing that
that's-
Warhammer Online did?
I don't know about that, but I mean they used to have it. I mean, because you could do master looter, and people would have loot councils and control who got the loot. And
Right.
Oh,
I
right.
wish
right,
they
right,
would
yeah.
allow you to do that again, and not that we ever would. If they did do that, we wouldn't use it.
It would just
but
be a roll.
it's very frustrating when you go in and you try your hardest, and I'll just use LFR as a base for this. You go in and you're doing the things that you're supposed to do. You're doing the mechanics correctly. You're doing your DPS or your healing or your tanking, and then somebody is just in there auto attacking, and they get loot and you don't. You
So-
know.
The problem is that you can't determine
I know.
somebody's gumption or whatever, like
Level of engagement.
how hard they're trying.
Yeah, I know.
through
That's true
the
because
game, how well they
it
do
could
it.
that could be their level of trying.
Because we know people
that's hard.
that I feel that they do try their best.
Yes.
And their best is just maybe par, maybe a little bit subpar than like normal stuff. And it's just like, it's hard to see other players underperforming your expectations of what they should be doing, especially
Yeah.
when you play
But
at a
in
higher
this
level.
case, though, if you at least consider that in PvP, everybody gets a participation trophy. Like, you get honor, and honor will get you a baseline, right? And even so, here's the thing: is that all these systems have currency except for rating,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, rating
put
has
one in.
has. You're right. You get the tokens, but that's not a currency. You're not earning that every time. You
Right,
should
yeah,
be
like a
able to
steady
earn
currency.
something every time. Every time you kill a boss and
Gold.
save up to not gold.
Anima.
A currency every time you go in and kill a boss, and there's a raid vendor instead of just some stupid token.
Yeah, I mean,
You
go,
know?
go back to where it was with Lich King, right? I mean, you can get tokens, or you can earn valor or justice points and all that stuff. I mean, because that's what we had to do, right? Run dungeons to get your valor or justice points to get your set. You get your
that's right,
set
we did
gear.
have,
Yeah.
Put
well, we had
put
too, didn't
fucking
we?
set gear back in. God fucking damn it.
Yeah.
Put vendor set gear back in. I mean, I guess maybe that's kind of what the Covenant gear is, but if that's the case, make the Covenant gear upgradable to higher levels. Because what is it flatline out?
They
197?
really should. They really should have. But honestly, they should have made all raid gear do the same ranking system that Mythic Plus has.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the Covenant gear is more open world bonuses and all that stuff.
They did a really good job. Well, sure, but there are still good bonuses on it to get you started, and I think they did. It feels almost perfect because you don't feel underpowered when you go in, and you have to work just hard enough, very adequately hard enough to get up to 197 on all your pieces. So, and that's a really reasonable spot to be in when you consider that LFR is 187 and normal is 200. And as I said before, normal always seems to be the baseline anchor item
Yeah.
level.
The only problem with the Covenant gear, though, is I'm pretty sure that those bonuses don't work. So you're going to feel a loss of power.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you still get like I don't think I have, let me check. Yeah, you get, like I have a strength bonus to my Fleshcraft if I have 5 pieces.
Right,
now,
but is it only...
The Shadowlands World set, that's 3 pieces. And then there's an 8-piece bonus that gives me some crit.
Right, but
when I kill an enemy.
But that stuff, I don't think, is active in the raid.
Oh, is it
No,
not?
it's only out in the world.
It's only out in the zones.
Yeah.
That's the problem with it.
Yes.
Is the set
Yeah,
bonuses.
there's only one that says outdoor in Shadowland zones. The other 2 set bonuses don't say that.
Yeah. What, the 5-1?
Oh yeah, I guess
The
maybe.
5 and the 8 don't say it. The 3 does.
Oh,
But that's
that's the
that's-
regeneration one, right?
Yeah.
The 3
Yeah.
one is the regeneration one. Sure, they don't want that in raids. Because that would just,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, but even still, like, yeah, if they kept those on there and they at least allowed it to be upgradable, even for the first tier, like, I'd be okay if it was just for the first tier, because it would be if it was just for the first tier, it'd be just like what Legion was, right? Because we had the Legion Hall gear set, and that kind of just got us barely started into, oh gosh, whatever that Emerald Nightmare
Yeah.
when Legion first came out. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess we could argue about it all day, or debate rather.
Yeah.
What the best method is, but in reality, the problem is they do really good things in one area and really, really, really bad things in another area, and it's all within the same context.
Yeah.
In this case, gear, right?
Yeah.
And I think the Covenant system gear, I think was freaking brilliant. It worked out so well.
Well, yeah, because
for
you
me,
got
at
it
least,
as you
on-
went along in the story, and it.
Yeah. Well, not to mention too, like when you got
Well-
loot from heroic and stuff, I still got to use it quite a bit, even on my hunter, which I use Threads of Fate instead of the normal leveling experience,
Grrr.
and I still felt like I was progressing through that, and that was nice. That was a good feeling to have. Before getting to the point now with my warrior where I feel like I'm just kind of at a wall. So yeah, I don't know.
Threads of Fate. My least favorite thing.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Covenant gear was initially it was bound behind the Covenant progression,
Mm-hmm.
and that was locked to 3 renown levels a week, I think.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I guess by the time the raid came out, maybe you would have had it all done. Maybe not. I don't remember what the timeline was, but I mean, I can understand how that would be annoying because you wouldn't necessarily have all 8 pieces to start a raid. You know?
Oh, the Covenant gear, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Because I don't think you got the last piece of Covenant gear until you finished the Covenant story or something like that, or along those lines. I think that it
maybe
was
so.
gated that way. So I think that might have been a flaw. And like when we're doing alts, it's a good way to gear alts up for sure. To, you know,
Oh yeah,
get
you
your-
can get it right away.
because you can burn through the Covenant story in a couple days. So you can get the full set and start upgrading it. You know what I mean? Whereas your first playthrough, when you play from live, you just don't have that. So that's kind of eh. But if they were to take the Covenant gear and make up the max level you could upgrade it to in patch 9.1 to be like just below the normal raid, I don't think that would be a bad thing, because then you would have a grindable way that you could start leveling pieces up to get them to like that just below raid level, normal raid level, right? For us, that would be great, because normally what do we do, like what 15 levels below what they drop? So I mean, we were a little bit lower this time because
Oh yeah, we were super low this
we
time.
were like
Nobody.
25, 35.
Yeah.
I think we set the bar like 35 eye levels below 200 for like just starting. Cause
Yeah,
it's
we
just
were
kinda,
like at 140.
no 160s.
Was it 160?
Yeah, most of us were
Okay.
like 160, 165.
Yeah.
So that's what we set our entry level in for people coming in to, to raid, just to make sure you kind of had something, right? It wasn't mythic. It wasn't even full blown, and it worked, right? And
Well, that again suggests when, I mean, not really, we already know, but the Castle Nathria is just, there are certain bosses that are just more complex that really should drop a little bit higher loot, because there is a progression path there for the level of difficulty between bosses as you go through, and you can tell.
Yeah.
There's a few different ones that require a little bit more. And when I say a little bit, I think that's a little bit enough to suggest that the item level drop should be higher, because then you have a way to progress up to that a little bit. Because unfortunately, stats are going to help compensate for,
Ability or
Mm.
minor
I mean, even
mistakes.
if it lacks a little bit, right? You're still operating on, on a curve, right? There's always going to be. It doesn't matter where it's at. Like, your low end's going to be your low end. Your high end's going to be your high end. And if you have a little bit more gear, that just means that line bumps up a little bit. And you don't have to fight that boss so hard. But
Mhm.
if our common item level is the same item level as the raid, and we're still having to, put in 110% on every boss just to get it down,
Well, again,
like
that's,
there's a thing there that they need to adjust.
well, okay, no, you can't necessarily blame that on the boss fights or whatever, because that could be player ability.
Mm.
Well, I think
just
it's
because
way too evident, though. I think it's way too evident, because it's not like, if you look back at the past raid bosses, like, even if I think back to 8.2 with Eternal Palace, the only early boss that I feel like was super complicated was the jelly boss. I don't know his name, but jelly boss is like the fourth boss or third boss. I don't remember.
Wait, and what
And
raid?
it was a very
Sounds
small space that you had to fight him in.
Was it the coral? Oh no, you're talking about Gorgonzola.
Oh, Gorgonzola.
That's like the fifth
And you had to
boss.
soak those things. Like, that was complicated for people to get into that pace.
Yeah,
But after a while, like, we breezed through all of those at a certain point. Part of Nathria is like that now, but some of it's not.
Well, I think part of that is knowledge of the fights now. You know what I mean? Like, we've done some of those easy ones so many times now, because we're, trying to get to the other ones that we needed to progress on. So I think that part of that is, so we know, like, there's a little bit of muscle memory in knowing some of the things, and okay, well, I can stand here, and you know what I mean? So we're more knowledgeable
I
about the
get that.
fights.
And even in this case, I think that the Nathrius was an okay example. Like, I know I'm jumping to the very end, but in reality, like, we had to coordinate fairly hard to get past a small part of it, just to be able to get that muscle memory, right? And we did do it, right? But even still, majority of us overgeared Nathria by that point.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like there was once upon a time, we would clear a whole raid many expansions ago. You would clear a whole raid in a week, right? And you would bust your ass, but you would do it. Now, like, the complexity
Right.
of a raid is so much more. There's so many more mechanics involved in a raid, but the reward system's the same. And I'm pretty sure this is the same thing we kind of talk about for the last couple of weeks, but it's, I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to explain why it irritates me so bad. Like,
right.
I
No,
don't,
sir.
I don't think
I don't
that,
like it.
huh?
I said no, sir. I don't like it.
I mean, I think it's partly, I know it's partly because of add-ons, because, they have to be more complex now because we have add-ons that tell us everything, right? Where we didn't before in vanilla. I mean, what you had CT raid tools, something like that. I can't even remember. It was so fucking long ago. But now we have, we have weak auras, we have DBM or bigwigs, whichever one you want to use. There's a bazillion add-ons that you can use to tell you when stuff is going to happen, and so they have to make them more complex because we have all these evolved tools, and with the evolved tools they'd be too easy if they didn't make them.
Well, I mean, that's their fault still, though, because they're the ones that create the content. If the content wasn't there to have to create the tools to adapt to them,
right,
then they would just go away.
right.
I mean, at that point, you're probably creating mechanics that don't need to exist if you have to have an add-on to manage it. Like,
right.
and unfortunately, that's just like,
Well, I
how
don't
do they not understand? Like,
see. Okay, I don't think that there's any mechanics in there that you necessarily have to have an add-on to manage. People use the add-ons to make it easier so that they can get through it.
I mean,
quicker.
if anything, it trains your brain enough, and then you could probably turn them off and not worry about them, at a certain extent. Unless you're completely like addicted to hearing the thing tell you get out of the fire. But
Well, I mean,
or don't.
I think that enough of the mechanics, like, the problem is that it's made people are reliant on it now. So if you disable them or took them away or whatever, people would, I think, a majority of people would have a hard time.
Yeah.
Because now it's going to require you to watch the
I'm
boss
definitely not
frame.
saying get rid of them by any means. So I'm saying like write them out. Like, don't disable them. Just don't create. Give the player experience. Make the player experience better.
Right.
We don't need 15 floor based spells going off and abilities and stuff at one time, and then you got to like dance around Venn diagrams and shit just to make sure that you don't die. Like, that's at a certain point you can call it garbage design because that's kind of what it is. Like, you don't need that, right? I think that having to use potions every 2 minutes.
Wait, you use potions?
No. I was
Oh.
saying having to use potions every 2
I don't
minutes.
think I've used a potion this entire freaking tier. Unless it's a mana.
I didn't even
No.
know potions still
not even
existed. But my point was, in like BC, as a healer, you would have to. You brought 15,000 pots, and you had
Yeah.
a pot every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
To keep your mana going.
Yeah.
I think that's a well more deserving system of complexity that's more organic than creating a mechanic that forces you to dance around and do stuff, right? I know that it got old and it got expensive, but it was still one of the things like,
Yeah.
until you get better gear, you're draining dry because you just can't
Yeah.
maintain it or something like that. High level, don't get too deep into it. I'm not saying we should
No,
bring
no.
it back. I'm just saying,
No,
like,
it's
there you could create, or there are organic things that you could latch onto and turn into mechanics with quotes, rather than trying to make 20 of them just to gate the player from with some fake complexity. I was going to use a better word because I keep using complexity, but that is what it is. So
Yeah, I don't know. I get what you're saying. Like, originally the game was hard, and to do it, you had to really.
The game wasn't hard originally. We
It
were
really
just
wasn't.
shit
You just showed up and
players.
you pressed one button, and then it eventually died.
Yeah, the
But I
game
mean,
was not hard.
That was Molten Core in a nutshell.
Okay, maybe not hard, but like slow, because like in order to do stuff, you had to go out, you had to farm, the herbs, you had to do.
Yeah,
you know
the
what I mean?
complexity was built outside of the raid for the most. Even just gathering the people together, that's a part of the complexity of it, and the
Right.
reward came from if you could get 40 people to work together and actually defeat this thing, then here's your reward.
Well, yeah, I mean, it should be like that. Going into the raid should be an epic adventure, right?
Mhm.
It should be all right. We're a group of seasoned, veteran hero type things, and there's this big badass dungeon raid or whatever with all these bosses in. All right, let's gather our gear. Let's make sure we have the right gear. Let's make sure we have the right provisions. It just like if you think about it from like if you were to play D&D to like the to the extent that you included in hunger and all that, like ammunition and all that stuff. If you were to play it like strictly like you're living in this world, you need to do everything that you would in real life, kind of thing. And when you prepare to go on an adventure, you need to have your exit strategies. You need to have make sure you have enough ammo. Like back when hunters had to fucking buy ammo.
Oh God, was that annoying?
Sure, it was annoying, but it's part of that inherent. I don't want to say complexity because it doesn't make it more complex, but there's a preparedness thing that needs to go. You have to prepare for the raid. You have to make sure that like the way it is now. It's
like soul shards with warlocks. You had to go out and farm all of those soul shards to be able to summon people, and yes, yeah.
But that's you could take out one or two mechanics off of a boss, right? Increase the health a little bit or something, and add those out, preparation complexities to it, and call it balanced. Like I don't think anybody would feel bad. Now, don't get me wrong. Like sometimes in LFR, it's really annoying to sit there and just watch the HP on a boss go down slowly. But those rewards aren't. You can't walk in and get normal level rewards in the raid right now, right? LFR, you can kind of jump in where you want to and go get your stuff. So I think that's how that plays into the mindlessness feeling for me. I will say it's not as bad this tier as it was before. But even still, like, I don't want to go in and just hit, a brick wall for 10 minutes by any means.
Can I just say, F you to Blizzard for making all those stupid on-use trinkets? Could you just give me some more passive goddamn trinkets, please? Jesus.
You still have them? I think both of mine
I don't
are.
have any passive ones. All I have is stupid on-use ones.
Yeah, I think both of mine are passive.
Yeah, all like the higher level ones I get end up being on use, and it's just like
ridiculous.
Man. It's like
Really?
I'll use one. I'm not using two, even though they made it so that when you use one, the cooldown on the other one's like 30 seconds instead of like the 2 minutes or whatever.
Stupid.
Yeah.
So you can't like chain them.
Should be able to put them together. If you're gonna give us all on-use trinkets, freaking allow us to use them together so we can have big burst.
I mean, or give us a way to merge trinkets into more powerful trinkets.
So many ideas. What's going on?
I know. Gosh.
We just
Kinda
need
like-
to start our own game.
Kind of like the Netherlight Forge, right?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that Netherlight
We
Forge.
can start the game. We'll have everything except graphics.
Yeah. And a story.
I mean, we could just do a mud.
We can do mud, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, man.
Go old school, right? Just
Right.
Get a multi-user dungeon out there. Turn left. Go north.
You run into a giant rat.
Shit. You shit in the corner. No. Oh, could you imagine just making like a voice activated one?
Oh my god.
Oh my. Yeah,
Voice
that would
activated
be-
mud.
Oh, make a
Google shit in the corner. Okay, it didn't trigger anything.
I'm waiting for it to go off.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, I was waiting, but I didn't say hey.
You
Google,
didn't say
so-
hey Google, yeah. And you don't sound like Brian, so. that's
No,
probably-
it triggers still.
Really?
Hey Google,
Yep.
play Never Gonna Give You Up.
Oh my god. It did not listen.
All right. Well, that's gonna, I guess, about wrap it up for us this week. We went ahead and we talked about the whole PvP boosting to get to 2K, 2.5K ish rating for gear to use in PvE. Complained about gearing again. So
It's the best thing to complain about.
yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we talked about
low
it.
hanging fruit.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the changes that are coming in 9.1 and just talked about general, I guess, boss complexities and just how it kind of is just meh. But anyway, Thanks everyone for listening. Check us out at facebook.com/server restart in. Send us a tweet at server_restart. And watch for us next week. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.